1 minute.
Guys, after this, we will have a short little talk about these etudes, but artists give them a second to take a breather after that. But then we'll have a and then you'll have some time for questions afterwards. So be thinking of all the things you want to ask him while he's here.
Well, that wasn't my college performance. The reason I learned this is because I want to be able to teach each individual of them, and they're so different from like number 1, number 2, double thirds. Are there any Asian students? Chinese, Taiwanese, Korean, Japanese? The reason I ask is because that's where my background came from. Right? I finished middle school, high school, buried with Czerny, Clementi, Kremer, the so-called 3 C's, the Masters of Etudes. And the first time I played Chopin Etude, that was a big shock for me. Nothing worked. I was in so much pain, so much tension. I was pretty proud that, do you guys know, like Czerny wrote thousands of etudes, and the hardest is Opus 740. There are, I think, 60 of them. I memorized them all. I can play them from beginning to the end. But when I first tried to play Chopin etudes, nothing works. Okay? I didn't know why. I just thought maybe there is just a big bump in terms of the technique. But not until recently I realized how they were thinking of piano techniques are so different. You might have heard this training method actually invented by Clementi. They put a coin on top of the palm, and then if you play without dropping the coin, then you're a good pianist, right? And many ancient teachers, they really worship that method, and I, including myself, had to practice under that. And is that a good thing? Maybe it's a good thing for playing Mozart, for playing Bach. Is that a good thing for playing Chopin? That's absolutely the worst. You should always avoid that. And why? You see, I don't know what's the college called here, because we're called Art and Humanity, right? And maybe here is a school of music.
You have Arts College and
Arts College.
Music Department.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I think it's the sentiment that all arts and humanities professors have. Old things are the best. Right? Shakespeare beats everyone, Bach beats everyone. They always should look back. But if you think of like the STEM, right, the math or technology, they like the new stuff. Right? iPhone 12 is always better than iPhone 11. They always want to look forward. In terms of repertoire, I think it's a great thing to look back, right? That's why Brahms is so great. While everyone is looking forward, he's looking back while having innovations. But then in terms of technique, we should not look back. We should not use the Clementi way of playing the piano when we play Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Shostakovich, and all the people born 200 years later. Okay? What's the biggest difference? Any of you tried any Clementi or Kremer or Czerny? Have you ever played any? Yeah? I think the biggest difference is that they rarely use black keys. And even if you look at a Mozart sonata, when Mozart uses black keys, he rarely uses thumb to play on black keys. Okay? If you've heard this saying, I don't know if that's 100% true, but J.S. Bach, he phrased the piano playing with using a lot of thumbs. Okay? But I think Chopin here freed thumb even further. You can play black keys with a lot of thumbs. And why is that significant? And what do we need to change in order to kind of apply for this new technique environment? Anybody? So suddenly now we need to use a lot of thumb. on the black keys, right? Kind of like when you're teaching a piano class, no thumb on the black keys, the first thing you tell them, because that's how we design our fingering. What changes when we have to use thumbs?
Wrist movement?
That's right. The angle of your wrists totally changes, and you have to be so flexible with the wrist. And that's another thing that you see, none of us heard Chopin play, right? We can only tell from second-hand source by other people commenting on how Chopin played. They all mention how flexible his wrists are. And maybe another thing that caused this change is because Chopin was never formally trained. He stopped having piano lessons when he was 12 years old. No one could teach him. He kind of invented his way up. Unlike Liszt, who was trained by Czerny, and if you compare, Liszt doesn't require as much wrist movement than Chopin. Okay, and if you take a look at, I've seen this kind of a piano pedagogue trees, like teachers trained by Liszt, teachers trained by Chopin. There is only one student, Mikuli, who we can, yes, he's one of Chopin's best, but from Liszt, you have, Russian influence, German influence. He taught so many students, and they went influence the world. But why Chopin didn't have so many students? He actually he lived on, that's his main income, by teaching rich students, right? Like the blue-blooded and the rich people. But they were not interested in performing and teaching because they're so rich. He charges about 20 francs, which is about close to $500 to $600 per lesson. So he teach for 6 months and went on composing for 6 months. So during that his students never kind of, who inherited his teaching, never taught. So I think that's maybe another reason why this wasn't focused, but Czerny's training and Liszt training was so focused. So basically, just thinking back, when I was struggling with the etudes, to be honest, I couldn't play one from the beginning to the end without having to shake my hand and relax and take a breather during maybe a 6 pages etude. So the reason why I today want to play the whole thing is not because I just want to prove to myself the way I approach this really works. I'm still tired. It's like after you run a half marathon, you're still tired, but then you can do it, right? Okay, so I have grouped these 24 into some catalogs. Okay, the first one are the double notes. Chopin loves double notes. Not so much Liszt, not so much Brahms, but Chopin has 4 etudes that was devoted to double notes. Of course, the notorious double third, this one, and then the Opus 25 number 8 and double 6. Okay. And there are 2 more in Opus 10. One is the Opus 10 number 7. So that's a kind of a switch between the third and the 6th. And the other one is, anybody know the other etude that uses double third 6? It's the Opus 10 number 3, the slow one. And in the middle, it's quite a challenging middle section. A lot of students, when they want to start with one Chopin etude, they always want to play that one, right? Because the opening is so beautiful. They get to hear it, they give up, right? I always tell them, Chopin never wrote the middle section into speed round. But everyone do, right? Everyone played this with. But then you can. If your student really loves this so much, you can, he did put a little motion, but he never put and then take and then allegro. And we can find these double notes in, for instance, the fourth ballade. We can find the double notes in the third sonata. So he really uses this a lot. And how do we approach this? How do we place? Of course, there are many obstacles we have to conquer. One is to play them together. The other is stamina. Like it really creates tension. The way I was trained when I was young, I was told that to lift finger a lot is a good thing to do. So I wasted childhood, right, on lifting fingers, playing hand and turning. It totally doesn't work. It destroys your hand, it destroys the music for many reasons. One, if you lift it, you waste a lot of time. You lift the finger, you can only hit, and we don't want this marks tautology, we don't want this to be aggressive. But the most important reason is that when you lift fingers, you cause tension. Our hands are not designed. I mean, if you are curious, if you try to lift it as high as you can, you feel this tension in this forearm right away. Okay? So if you do this a lot, you're basically saying, I want to make my life a lot harder. Okay? If you do this, you're probably not only not able to play the whole thing, but you'll probably not be able to play one etude. But then if we do not lift finger, where does the force come from? Because we do need some force to press the key to make the sound. It comes from the constant movement of our wrist. Okay? Have any of you been told by your teachers that your wrist is too high or your wrist is too low? Anyone? Which one is better, too high or too low?
Neither.
Yeah. If your wrist is not moving, something is wrong. Okay? Because the wrist needs to, I mean, if you just put your hand on this and you feel like your wrist is doing this motion, and you're pressing down the key. Okay? Another thing that I find after learning all these double notes is that when you have your fingers stay very close to the key, you can always play them together. Okay? Because when you lift, third finger can lift higher, fourth not so much. Thumb is, a special one that is different. And depending on how high you lift, right, you create that. But you can only for people sitting there, if you don't mind keeping the social distance, but I felt like you're not watching. Like the wrist is constantly moving motion. And how do we teach that? I can't really tell a student, okay, so go to the right, go to the left, because everyone's ratio, the fingers, the ratio is different. The ratio of like how long someone has longer arms, someone doesn't have longer arms. The ratio is different. So the angle for everyone is so individual. And even for pianos, I practice on a 6-foot Steinway. This is a 9-foot, and I always have this feeling, 9-foot Steinway, the key is a little deeper. I don't know if that's right. No?
Yeah.
No?
I don't really know.
Right, because you practice on a 9-foot.
So I think that they regulate the key depth really carefully.
Okay, all right. River State, we got a new one about 3 years ago. It wasn't regulated. It was shipped from LA. You know what? When you press the black key, it actually sinks in. You have to, you lift vertically to get out of there. So that's something you need to adjust. So actually, that's the first thing I do to see how the keys react. But then even if just stop the lifting finger would totally make it better. Okay. The other group, I The other group is broken chords, and they have really a number of them. For instance, number 1, number 8, okay, number 24. Okay, so these are the obvious ones. Number 11. Also broken chords. Can any of you think of more of the broken chords? Well, I find mine. No. Oh, it's a broken chord that starts with a wrong direction, not going up or down, but kind of like circling. Okay, anything else? Broken chord with a partitura. That's also a broken chord. There are more. Opus 10 number 9. And in these broken chords, number 11 is difficult, right? It's such a large stretch. Number 13, opus 25, number 1, this is a big stretch too. Numbers 8 and number 1 by opus 10, not so much. Okay, but which one do you think is harder when you learn them? Number 1 is hard, or if you compare number 8 and number 11, compared to which one is harder? Which one is harder? Okay, well, I actually did a video talking about the difficulty level, and of course, people never agree on this. Someone thinks number 8 is the hardest, which I don't think so, but most people think number 2, number 1, or the winter wind and double thirds are hard. My first etude that I learned was opus 10 number 1. That was a big mistake. Very, very difficult. Is it as largely stretched as, let's say, 11 or even this, the part, the Aeolian part? Not really, but somehow those always felt very difficult. Why? Because when it's within your reaching position, like I can reach 11, and these are not hard for me to reach. Because of that, I forget about taking breaks. Okay, so watch my wrist, what I do when I play, let's say, the Aeolian part. It's almost like for us, it's an open book test, right? He tells you what to do, because by not using your wrist, you simply cannot reach them. Oh, who can reach? Maybe Rachmaninoff can, but there are even larger stretches which I missed today that you have to move your wrist. So when you do that instantly, or your students do this even without you reminding them, it naturally kind of cancels out the tension. But when I play opus 10 number 1 or opus 10 number 8, this one, I don't remind my okay, so really, to college audition and play this for competitions, I still remind myself, you have to move your wrist. Because it doesn't do it automatically. Okay, for number 8, same. Number 8 is a reversed version of number 1, and it's slightly easier because the stretch are not so wide. Okay, and the other group, the grouping of all the etudes, is kind of like a mind-twisting grouping game. A lot of you have played this one. Number 10, opus number 4. And this is what Narita Chu always talk about, the refraction counts, right? When the note goes up and down very often, then it's hard, right? When it always goes up, it's easy. When it always goes down, it's easy. Because we practice the scales all the time. So if we consider this one, the refraction count is massive. Right? When it's, that's also easy because you see a pattern, or but in this one, the pattern is not very obvious. Even the left hand. So when I first learned this, like nothing is right. Okay, I feel like it's so moody when I play. Until I figured out how Chopin really is really teaching us. If we will start from the first note, play C sharp and then up, down, up, down. But if you think of the grouping from the third note, and who here cannot play do re mi fa? Right? That becomes a grouping with an obvious pattern. And the pattern doesn't have any refraction. Of course, you have to here use your wrist left hand same. Okay, so I think he learned this from J.S. Bach by grouping the fast rhyming notes not from the downbeat. Okay, because when Bach, if you check a prelude and fugue in the prelude, when you have 4 16th notes, you rarely would start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It's always 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So here, Chopin started with 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. But of course, that's in terms of the technique. But music still starts with the first one. The other good example is what we will have the pleasure of listening to, the revolutionary. This is when you start the reverse from this one. But if you start thinking from the third note, because when you have 4 notes going to the same direction, you know where to move your wrist. Okay, see again, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, I just want to check on the time.
Yes.
Maybe this is a good chance to transition. We have about 15 minutes, I think.
Okay, all right. The last one is this. If you have the score, this is how I group them. I group them into 6. I don't know how, I didn't play so well today, but that's how my technique, I treat my technique, but it later on breaks into smaller groups. Right? They change from 6 note groups to 4 note groups. So really, when you train your hands, you have to train them like they're bad kids. They don't want to listen to you, but you have to trust them. So this is how you're going to do, and you watch if the wrists are doing. 6 or 4 or sometimes 5. And you see, of course, the people always tell, oh, you always tell disclaimers, but see, I waste a lot of energy driving here. I was tired, and then I didn't have oxygen. This is not my best day, and who here performs the 11? But despite all that, I was still able to finish because my hands are trained, right? My brain is raised, but my hands are trained so that I can still somewhat finish the set. Okay, and always remember to relax your wrist, to relax your arm requires constant movement. Okay, so when you felt like you're tightened or you cannot finish, check on this. Okay, all right, so let's hear.
Okay, while we move pianos and get them cleaned, I want to introduce our performer today. Logan, you want to come up and I'll introduce you to everybody. So Logan's been taking from me for about 6 or 7 months or so. Logan, you moved here from Colorado, is that right? Yeah, he was in art school in Colorado, moved here. He's a junior at Rizwan, and I told him, I'm sure this will be way too scary for you, but I want to give you the opportunity to play a master class with all young majors into this new artist. Like, sure, bring it on. So I think it's pretty cool that he we should also say that you've only been working on the Revolutionary, this last month, right? About a month, yeah. So still a work in progress, but I think a lot of the things you're hearing, this is such great advice for him to work on and thinking about your approach to the keys and everything. So, do you need Sorry. Okay. Okay. So let's introduce or let's welcome.
Okay, all right, that's very good. See, this is the dilemma when we teach etudes, right? My instinct wants to talk about more music, but I know while we're here, we're trying to have the technique aspect improved. So first of all, the technique that seems not bothering you at all, okay? And you can play a little faster, but that comes with time when you're more familiar. And usually to play faster is easier when you have it memorized. But I know you've only been working on this for a month. I want you to understand one concept. Do you know what's a circular breathing in like a woodwind playing? Like, do you have any friends who plays oboe or clarinet? No? They have this technique called circular breathing, and it's relatively new. It's not like Brahms' time they use that. So they are able to hold one note forever. And you will see their phrase pop up like this, like a frog. They accumulate some air, and while they squish that air, they take a very quick breath. And why am I mentioning this? Because at the very beginning, when the song is so, you know the story of Rhein-Neckar, right? See, I don't know if Chopin really wrote this during the war or before the war. His country was invaded by the Russians, and he was pretty angry. He wanted to go back join the army, and they were like, "Oh, the army is probably better without you. You're not most strong hand." We don't know if that story is true, but you sense this kind of heroic feeling. So, if I may, we need to play, I will wash my hands after. So we need to play.
I think that's great.
Yeah. Okay. So, if I may play a little bit. I think the left hand. More sound, okay? And how do we? Actually, that's one thing I forgot to mention in the talk. How do you make sure every notes are deep enough, are pronounced, not just played, right? Because for you pronounce half of the notes, and then the other half is just barely played, so the sound is not as deep. I mentioned how the wrist has to constantly be moving. So there is the down moment and there is the up moment. Right? What do you do is the up moment when you exhale, not inhale. Okay? You use the weight of your arm. Okay, let me show you. So right now, if you just listen to the sound, if I'm not using my weight, the sound actually goes up when my wrist goes up. But then here, my wrist is going up, but then I applied a little bit of my arm weight to it. So it's almost like I'm constantly doing this while my arm is doing this. Okay? And do you see that? Not so much, because I don't want this kind of movement when I play, but I do it secretly a little bit. Okay? So, what I was going to mention, like I said, my brain is raised. Do you have any favorite pianists? Anyone that you like their performances?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Oh, okay. When I was 16, really, I buried myself in the recordings, right? The old ones. Most of my pianists, they died like 8 years ago. Daniel Party, Coteau, Ignace Friedman, Rachmaninoff, of course, and Horowitz, Rubinstein, and all that. And I collect their posters, I collect their CDs and LPs. They look awesome on the cover. Right, they're always they're proud when they play. They have a gesture, especially Rubinstein. Rubinstein always like this. I was fooled for many years because when they really play, they do this, and hunchback, and they pull forward, and that's an awful angle to take a photo. Okay, so because I only have CD, I don't have many DVDs, so I really don't see how they really look like when they play. Nothing like this. Okay, so I don't know, is the height comfortable for you? That's another reason I always choose to have maybe a little bit higher bench, so that when I want to lean forward, I can. Okay, let's try this. If you have trouble feeling that, practice standing. Because when you stand, then there is more weight that you can apply. So push forward and try this. You're already doing this, that's wonderful. But try to apply more weight upon it. Almost like you're never hitting the piano, but you're always giving the piano a massage. Almost like that. Yeah, can we try that? Just from the very beginning, left hand alone. Oh, especially the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Much better. And you have to learn from practicing slowly. Okay? And the other thing is, if you have to score or if you play this, Chopin put an accent on all the downbeats. It did the same thing, Opus 10 number 1. It sounds awful when I have 4 accents in one measure. I actually discussed this with my professor back then, and she said it's an indication of keeping straight rhythm instead of da 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 or da 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 da, and I completely agree with her. So if we can somehow eliminate that accent, that audible accent, but instead to keep a very straight time, I think that's what the meaning behind. Okay, and that's another reason why I ask you to lean forward a little bit on the 3rd and 4th note, so that not only the first note is strong, but then you have a much longer line. Okay, let me give that a try from the beginning, just like that. Much better. Yes. And I assure you, if you keep doing this wrist motion, you won't be tired. Okay? And the other thing that musically about this, you see, dum, dum, ba, bum, dum, ba, bum, we have so many dotted rhythm. Okay? And it's the dotted rhythm that keeps this majestic feeling. Yeah, if I may use the I'm actually over dotting. So the dot is not da dum ba bum, it's da dum ba bum. But the second time, it's more piano, right? Where is it? Okay. So the second page. Can also help you with creating a more vivid character in music. Okay, can we get that a try just from here? Yeah, okay, so here, that's a very good example. Where is the shape of music? Right? Is that the most comfortable technique? Not really. Why? When our left hand is playing towards the right side, it's like backhand, right? When you play tennis, right? This is forehand, that's backhand. You don't hit as, or you don't move as freely. So you have a backhand, how would you do? Yes, yes, okay. Let's get that going. Because when they kind of have different orbit you have to follow. But it takes time, and if you practice some hand individually, and you will find the balance. Okay? Do we still have time?
We're just
I think
we have some
maybe-
students have a 1:30 class. So
All right.
yeah.
Okay. And 1 hour or 2 hours, even 10 hours is not enough to spend on these. This was, like Pedro said, was my quarantine summer project. I actually recorded about 16 hours of tutorial on each one of them. One in Chinese, one in English, and then I kept going because I had like subscribers keep asking me to do Mozart and do Beethoven, so that channel is alive. But I think this was from last May until October. I have all the 24 tutorials uploaded. Just YouTube my name, it will pop up, and that's a more detailed tutorial on each one of the etudes. But thank you for watching, and if you have questions, see how you can figure out yourself by moving your wrists a little bit more. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Channel so you can check out the videos. If you want to stay and ask a couple of questions,
yeah,
you're welcome. We have a little bit of time for Q&A, but if you have to get to keyboard skills class or keyboard harmony class, then we'll see you next time. Let's have another hand for Dr. Wang.